第一种剧本，内战爆发，加州宣布独立，这绝非危言耸听。这是2025年的美国 ？No， 这是2025年的洛杉矶。说起洛杉矶啊，给人的感觉从年初的洛杉矶山火没人救援，就能感受到洛杉矶人民的血压层层的往上飙。据说一场火直接烧到2兆亿美元。而今天的移民突袭，国民警卫队镇压，现役海军陆战队待命，一场比好莱坞大片更疯狂的内战正在上演。特朗普为何不惜撕裂国家，也要发动这场史上最大驱逐行动？而普通人的命运又将被这场风暴推向何方？大家好，欢迎来到老友记，我是大钊。同志们，今天咱们要聊的这场危机可能会改变美国的历史。短短2天内，洛杉矶就爆发了数十起大规模的抗议事件，示威者焚烧美国国旗，高喊 ICE 滚出加州，更有人投掷烟花冲击政府大楼。就这还不是高潮，特朗普没有调解，没有安抚民意，而是签署了一项震惊全球的命令。这波操作是美国200年以来最严重的宪政危机。特朗普动用美军法典第10章，直接接管加州国民警卫队，这等于架空了州政府的权力。加州州长纽森痛斥，这是蓄意挑衅，联邦政府根本就不想解决问题，他们只是想制造恐慌。更惊人的是，国防部长赫克塞斯还威胁，如果再不听话，就派驻彭德尔顿基地的现役海军陆战队上街。当联邦军队把枪口对准了自己的国民，那美国自由的灯塔还能维续几何？为什么一场移民突袭行动会让美国本土爆发内战级别的冲突？为什么加州州长怒斥这是政治秀？而更可怕的是，这场冲突的背后是否隐藏着特朗普政府一个惊天计划？特朗普的零容忍政策让118名无证移民一夜之间沦为囚徒，其中包括5名诬陷成黑帮成员的无辜者。这些移民中有的人只是为了给孩子挣一口饭吃的单亲妈妈，有的人是逃离暴力的难民。但特朗普政府却用国家安全的名义把他们扔进了拘留营。更可怕的是，这场驱逐行动正在摧毁美国引以为傲的自由女神像。难道这是美国的叛乱法剧本的预言？特朗普虽然没有正式启动叛乱法，但一切动作都在试水温。咱们先来看看调动美国国民警卫队需要哪些触发条件。首先，使用叛乱字眼，白宫高层公开将抗议定性为反美叛乱。国防部长公开威胁出动现役军人。叛乱法是美国总统用于镇压叛乱的终极武器，一旦使用，将授权总统直接调动军队进入地方维持秩序，完全绕开国会州政府。换句话说，这是一张国家戒严的王牌。难道董王想学习前韩国总统尹锡悦？不可否认，特朗普政府正在做的是一场真实的预演，让人想起《战国策》，兵者凶器，圣人不得已而用之。如今，美国政府竟然将兵戎用在自家的人民身上。下面咱们先一起来看一下外媒怎么说。
Start this out in Los Angeles. President Trump has ordered 2,000 National Guards into the city to counter escalating protests in a predominantly Hispanic district of the Californian city. It comes after a second day of clashes between residents of Paramount and border immigration officers trying to implement President Trump's policy to deport unauthorized migrants. Now, federal ICE agents used tear gas, flashbangs and batons to disperse the protesters. The White House border policy chief has gone to Los Angeles to personally supervise the operation, during which more than 40 migrants were arrested on Saturday. He warned that there would be zero tolerance of any violence or damage to private property. The mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, said ICE was sowing terror in America's second largest city. Well, announcing the order deploying the National Guard, the White House said the administration has a zero-tolerance policy for criminal behaviour and violence, especially when that violence is aimed at law enforcement officers trying to do their jobs. These criminals will be arrested and swiftly brought to justice. The Commander-in-Chief will ensure the laws of the United States are executed fully and completely. Well, I want to show you some of the latest pictures from Los Angeles, and they come in the last hour. They show law enforcement officers wearing protective equipment, including helmets, coming out of the Federal Detention Center. Now, several of them fire tear gas towards the protesters. And it also appears that some form of explosive stun projectiles, which are often described as flashbangs, are thrown. Now, this came after the LAPD issued dispersal orders in some parts of the city. They had said that the use of less lethal munitions had been authorised, saying they can cause pain and discomfort. Well, the protesters then did seem to pull back, and then law enforcement officers formed a line and they walked down the centre of the road. You can still see those bangs going off, clearing the area. They were trying to establish a cordon. More tear gas and bang projectiles were thrown. Now, officers say multiple people have been detained for failing to disperse after multiple warnings. Well, in the last half an hour, President Trump has posted on his Truth Social platform. Let me read to you what he said. He said, "Great job by the National Guard in Los Angeles. After 2 days of violence, clashes and unrest, we have an incompetent governor and mayor who were, as usual, just look at how they handled the fires, and now they're very slow permitting disaster. Federal permitting is complete, unable to handle the task." He goes on to say these radical left protests by instigators and often paid troublemakers will not be tolerated. He also says, from now on, masks will not be allowed to be worn at protests. What do these people have to hide and why, he says. Again, thank you to the National Guard for a job well done. Well, we at the moment can't yet verify whether the National Guard have actually deployed to LA, but earlier one of the protesters described why they had come out onto the streets.
Purpose was to peacefully tell them to not take our people. We overheard, it's been shared, that ICE had came to our towns. We're just here living, working. They stopped at Home Depot where they know that people are undocumented. So us as a community have came here to try to make peace so that they don't make families separate one another. And what did they do? They just started to attack us. We were peaceful, and all of a sudden they started throwing bombs at us. I know a lot of us just unified together on the other side to not let the bus that was coming in with all the police, and then instead of them peacefully telling us to back up, they just started pepper spraying us. There's a lot of women out there that have pepper spray.
Well, let's put the area where this is happening into a little context for you. Now, Los Angeles, of course, is a huge sprawling city with many different districts, with some of them predominantly populated by particular communities. Now, the Paramount District is about 15 miles inland from the Pacific Ocean and its beaches, and even further from areas like downtown LA, Santa Monica and Beverly Hills. It is a predominantly Latino district, and despite the name, Hollywood's Paramount Studios are located more than 20 miles away. Well, our reporter in Los Angeles is Reagan Morris. She brought us this update.
The area I am, there's a very large law enforcement presence. A lot of the protesters have either dispersed or moved on to other areas, but we can still hear flashbangs going off in the distance, and there were just some fireworks going off, one of the neighbors setting them off. But it's still quite tense. And just about an hour ago, we were walking from one area to another, and somebody threw a Molotov cocktail over the fence where we were, and the LA County sheriffs came rushing out. The guy's leg, actually, their pants caught on fire briefly as he tried to stamp it out, and they were trying to find out who was throwing Molotov cocktails at them. A flashbang accidentally went off next to the police, which made a lot of the protesters laugh, but then they just came in aggressively and moved people out. But we can hear it's still going on, and it moves around, and we're near an area where earlier today, a few hours ago, there was a very large presence of ICE agents, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, in unmarked cars. And we've been told by some locals that there are factories around here where some migrants are still locked inside, afraid to come out. And that's something we've heard not just over the last few days in LA County, but over the last few months, that a lot of immigrants who do not have legal documents to live here are living in fear, very real fear of being deported.
Now, LA is what's known as a sanctuary city. Just explain what that means.
Well, it's not just LA. Most of California is a sanctuary, and it means that local law enforcement are not meant to cooperate with federal immigration officials. So if an undocumented immigrant, illegal immigrant, was arrested for shoplifting, when they get out of jail, the local authorities are not meant to tell Immigration and Customs Enforcement that, hey, this guy, you can pick him up and deport him, whereas that would happen in most places in Texas. So a lot of lines are being crossed the last few days, though, at least the perception of it, as people see local law enforcement fanned out on the streets after they were called in to help Immigration and Customs federal officials to protect them. But locally, a lot of people just think they blend it into one and see it as cooperation and targeting the immigrant community.
How do you think President Trump ordering in the National Guard is likely to go down? We've already heard from Governor Newsom saying that it is inflammatory and will only escalate tensions.
I think that is what the governor has said, and that's what a lot of the local leaders are saying, and people we've spoken to here today, that that would not be well received in a lot of neighborhoods, especially immigrant. This is where I am in Paramount. It's more than 80% Hispanic. It's a very big immigrant community, so it will probably not be very well received. We've heard from our partners at CBS that just in the last hour or so, that Governor Newsom and President Trump spoke on the phone for about 40 minutes. We don't know the contents of that phone call, but maybe something has changed throughout that. We don't know.
And this, of course, is all because of President Trump's policy to deport unauthorized migrants.
Yes, that is part of the policy, whereas California policy is more often to protect migrants, whether they have legal documents or not. California is the fourth biggest economy in the world, and a lot of the agriculture sectors in particular, there's a lot of migrants working in those jobs that don't necessarily have legal status in the United States and California, and the economy really relies on them. So they do try and protect law-abiding migrants without proper paper, many of whom pay taxes and go to work every day.
Reagan Morris in Los Angeles. Well, one witness to the protest that has been going on there over the last few hours spoke to a local reporter at the scene about what they had seen.
We were at a stoplight on the other side of Paramount, right? Over there in Alondra. When out of nowhere in the stop, immigration agents, ICE, all that came, they came dressed up in all their military gear and they stopped traffic. When they stopped traffic, we started noticing, and I told my girl, that's immigration right there. What they started doing was they went in front of a business, a negocio, and they started raiding it. They started bringing people out in vans. Once they started doing that, that's when everybody knew, what was going on. And everybody was there in the traffic jam. Everybody, right? You're stuck in your car, in your vehicle. When they saw us looking at them doing all that, that's when they started throwing tear gas. Everybody was still in their vehicles. As soon as one of the tear gas,
you said who was behind you?
Behind us, there was a woman and her young daughter. She was around 13. I kept in touch with them, and as we speak, she's in the hospital because the tear gas bomb hit her right in the face. They were right behind us, taking notice that we're not there to protest. We were stuck at the light, right? But we're witnessing everything happening right in front of our eyes. The tear gas explodes. They come out crying out of their vehicle, and they can't breathe. They're literally on the ground, right? I have the video. I have the footage, right?
And so what do you and your girlfriend do at that point?
We get off, and we see everybody else getting off to record. Peacefully, we do not throw anything at them. We're not yelling at them. We're just recording what's going on because people deserve to know the truth. This is why you guys are here. This is because, these things need to be documented. This is what they wanted. They wanted people to riot. They wanted the people to start fireworks. They wanted the people to start burning out. Why? Because this is the effect. So they can make us look bad. So they can make us seem that we're the ones causing this, that we started it.
That's Fernando Delgado, a witness to the protest. Well, Rachel Uranga is the immigration reporter at the LA Times. She told us about the latest situation in Los Angeles.
Less than an hour ago, I can still hear some of the shots that were ringing out in downtown Los Angeles. There is some clashes going on in Paramount, which is a largely Hispanic community, working class Latino community in Los Angeles. And there's also another small small confrontation in downtown Los Angeles, just outside of the federal detention center, where immigrants who have been picked up in raids this week or at courthouses are being held. Los Angeles is a notoriously blue area, and it has a really heavy immigrant population. While there's people here that do think that if you've overstayed your visa or if you aren't here legally, you should face the law. There's a lot of people out here who support the immigrant community and who are tied to it. And just to tell you how deeply embedded California is with this community, it's like 1 out of every 2 children are immigrants. It's a really high number that live and in mixed families. One of the family members has a status that they're not here legally. Los Angeles has turned into ground zero as a test for the limits of Trump's immigration policy. I mean, here, this economy really depends on immigrant labor and on communities that are tied to immigrants. So, the Trump administration has really had some high profile raids here, and it's really tested people. Some people would say, and some politicians have said, it's provoked people. And I think a lot of the politicians are not happy, the local politicians, Newsom certainly, about them sending over the National Guard, that they feel sort of an overblown show of force.
我们不是美国公民，但我们生活在这个被美国影响的世界。当一个超级大国用国家安全的名义来对抗移民，用恢复秩序的借口镇压抗议，所有的人都应该保持清醒。第一，美国的自由叙事正在破产，新闻自由、人权优先、表达自由，这套价值观的神话正在洛杉矶街头被撕碎。作为旁观者，我们要用质疑的眼光去看待那些标榜普世的概念。任何带着武器去管理秩序的人，其真正的目的是服从，而不是自由。第二，中国该如何应对移民话术的反噬？美国长期将移民议题政治化、武器化，对中国而言，我们更要警惕外界将人道包装成干涉内政的工具。当西方开始自毁价值，我们更需要坚定主张：治国先安民，安民先定心。就像荀子说：“国者积人也，仁者积心也。”美国若连人心都失，又谈何统治？这场冲突的结局将决定美国的命运。第一种剧本，内战爆发，国民警卫队与现役海军陆战队向平民开火，加州宣布独立，这绝非危言耸听。第二种剧本，政策逆转，民主党发起弹劾，特朗普被迫下台，移民政策重回温和路线。第三种剧本，社会和解，政府与抗议者坐下来谈判，建立合法移民通道，但这需要双方放下仇恨。那么还有没有第四种剧本？请在评论区留下